Hello and welcome to another episode of Revive Stories. It is so good to be with you. We have just wrapped up Easter weekend. It has been a phenomenal time in our church, and we have got another amazing Revive story with Natasha, who's a fantastic lady in our church. And we can't wait to hear a little bit more about her story. Thank you so much for joining us, Natasha. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic, man. We're so excited to hear about you. And for anybody that's joining Revive Stories for the first time, or maybe you've just stumbled on this episode today, Revive Stories is really just a place where we chat to some of the amazing people in Revive Church and we find out a little bit more about their story, what God has done in their life, what God is maybe still doing, the highs and the lows. We really believe in the power of the testimony, of the story, because if God can do it for you, he can do it for somebody else. So Natasha, we normally like to start with just chatting a little bit about childhood and upbringing and kind of the formative years, the early years. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what your childhood was like.
Yeah, sure. So, like many people around the world, my childhood was pretty much a series of unfortunate events.
Okay.
But I grew up in Cape Town from the basics. I have a half brother, half sister. I'm the middle child syndrome, and a child of divorced parents. Didn't really know my dad, but my own personal journey was pretty rough growing
Sure.
up. So, as a really young child, I mean, talking tiny, I was sexually abused as a child for many, many years
Wow.
growing up. And it was quite tough as a small child in a family that was supposed to be quite close knit. And as I grew up, I eventually had the courage to speak out. And unfortunately, I was shut down, told I was looking for attention. No one
Sure.
really believed me. So it was quite rough the first
Yeah.
half of my life. Um, and then kind of went into my teen years. So someone with quite intimate knowledge of what had happened or what I'd, tried to bring to light, took advantage of it and basically used that against me in terms of like, I wouldn't be believed. And unfortunately, when I was 12 years old, I was raped, and yeah,
Yes.
I started my teens pretty broken, if I can put it like that. I was pretty stained. I thought I was quite unworthy of love, anyone's love, let alone the love of God, the God that created the universe.
Yeah.
Quite lonely as a teen, and weighed down by trauma.
Mm.
In quite a dark place. I tried to commit suicide as a young teen, more than once, but God had other plans for me. So I'm still here today, thankfully. And
Yes.
God had sent me, looking back now, God had sent me a counselor in my school who convinced me to open up. They could see I was quite troubled and, kind of take down the armor of that I had built up, over the years from pretty much since I was, walking. And I did. I opened up, and if we fast forward through the first bit of high school, and I went to court, and there was trials, and my
Yeah.
perpetrator did go to jail and pleaded guilty. There was still a lot of shame and guilt, and I was mocked in school because kids found out about it. I was taken away from my parents by social workers. So quite a rocky start. You wouldn't say, but quite a rocky start. And it led to some bad choices, if I could say that, in high
Mm.
school. And I had my son in matric. So we're talking 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. I was this straight A student. I
Sure.
was top 10 in the grade, and I think I placed 6 out of the 250 kids. And then from 2 p.m. and till 2 a.m. I was a mom of a few-week-old baby boy, and I was a single mom. So a lot going on, but I knew that I needed to pull myself together and get through this for him, and make sure that I could give him the life that I never had. So I left school, matriculated, bachelor's and all that sort of stuff. And I went to work at a academy almost, so you could study and intern at the same time, so I could still provide for my son. I always felt that work was the one space that I could control. I still have some control issues. So, but I knew that the harder I worked, the faster my career would grow, the more I could provide for my son. So I worked really hard. My career was booming, and things were going okay. But through all of this, I still didn't really have any sort of relationship with Jesus. I did grow up in a Christian home, so we were part of a church, and it was very much, Wednesday nights you're in church, Sunday mornings you're in church, Saturdays you're cleaning the church. But it was very tick box, if I could put it like that. But there was no relationship, and I certainly didn't think there was a place for someone as broken as me in the church.
Wow.
So now we fast forward into the early 20s, some questionable choices as well. But I finally met someone who, I felt loved me, and things moved quite quickly, got engaged, had my daughter, and I thought, right, this is my happily ever after. Everything else I'm going to leave behind, and, we're on the right track now. Career's going great. And of course, as life would happen, not quite as I expected. Unfortunately, he was fighting battles of his own. The guy that I was, engaged to, and he had his own battles that ultimately, in a short space, had cost us everything. So now I had 2 kids. We had no home. Didn't own anything. We literally just had a car. And I was like, right, I can't live in a car with 2 small kids. It's not going to work. That's not going to work for me. So we camped out on my parents' lounge floor. The kids loved it. So obviously, camping at granny. Mom, not so much. Definitely not so much. And I knew that there was more. There just had to be more. There was this hole. And while I loved my kids, there had to be more for me, right? This couldn't be my story. After everything, of course, it couldn't be my story. So I made some hard decisions and broke things off with this guy. And he went on his own journey where, he ended up on the streets. And he would come to my work, and I'd give him my lunch just to feed him, because, he was still the father of my daughter. He had his own trauma that he needed to heal from. And I realized very quickly that I couldn't fix him. That just wasn't something I could do. So he cleaned himself up, though. And eventually he was running this massive restaurant in Durbanville. He got his life together. It was a part of his daughter's life. But unfortunately, we lost him in 2018 due to some bad decisions that he made as well. And he had a heart attack. So we lost him, and he had his own battles. But I do believe that there's a season for everything and a season for everyone as well. But anyway, taking a detour back to me, after that hard decision to break things off and really just try and get back on track, because I'd built so much up and then lost everything. And I was only 24 at this point, so still quite young, but I needed to get things going. So I still had a good career that was going, that I never let anything at home affect, my work. So God made a way for me, and I found a place here in the area in Parklands. I moved in with the 2 kids, and really just, my life from there took a massive, massive turn. Career was doing amazing. I was working for a huge company. We were turning over millions. It was a really great space that I was now in after what has been quite a dark time. And that's actually when I was saved. This was 7 years ago. And at this company, I had a friend who said to me, listen, you got to come to this church. You have to come. I was like, oh, no, I'll go one day. And eventually she's like, no, I'm putting you in the car on Sunday morning. You and the kids, you're coming. I'm taking you. You're going, right? This is it. No more saying no. Just come once. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. Hop in the car on a Sunday morning to Alcana 7 years ago. Probably similar time 7 years ago, actually. And I was like, what am I getting myself into? These people are way too happy. Everyone is laughing and talking, and I was very out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And towards the end of worship, Sven got on stage and he asked everyone to go on their knees. Now, while this is happening, my friend's looking over at me. She's busy mouthing an apology, saying this doesn't normally happen. This isn't weird. She's so sorry. If I don't want to like go on my knees, that's okay. And I went on my knees. I was like, I'm not going to be the only one sitting out of this. And something happened. Something shifted.
Sure.
And oh, sorry. If you can imagine the like those backpackers with those bags that are like double the size.
Yeah.
For the first time, I'd gone on my knees ever. Sorry.
No.
And I was able to put that bag down. I was
Sure.
able to put down all the bags and baggage and armor and everything. So sorry, I was not meant to cry. And
No, Shane, let me give you a moment to gather yourself there. This has been I actually had no idea. Listen, I had a slight idea of your story, but man, there's just so much there. There's so much that's happened in your life, highs and lows. And I mean, you know, just you on the outside, and it's you know, it's probably intentional, very put together, organized, strong person, but that your life hasn't been void of these kind of very tough, difficult moments. You know, thank you so much for letting us into that and for explaining that. And I think what I really want to know is, and you're speaking about this moment of kind of letting stuff go. I would feel like if I was, especially those things that happened when you were a lot younger, a lot of like anger and like even resentment, and maybe even anger towards God, which would be like understandable from that perspective. Would you say that in that moment when you were able to kind of put everything down, would anger and some of those other emotions, would that have been a part of that? Or was that something that maybe you had let go like already in life?
No, there was always some form of anger, some form of why me? What did I do? How was this my fault? And in that moment of letting everything down and putting it down and just forgetting about the anger and the questions, I didn't really understand what unconditional love was. And in that moment, being able to put that aside and allowing myself to feel something, this wave of unconditional love had washed over me. And I knew that I was home. And I really, truly met Jesus on the floor of Volcano 7 years ago.
Wow. That is amazing. Jeez. I think maybe there's so much we can talk about, to be honest. There's so much that I can touch on here, but I'd love to just kind of find out, you know, were there any like kind of big changes in your life? It sounded like you had already, the impression I'm getting is that you're someone who is hardworking, that's got a lot of fuss bait and can just push through things. One of the awesome things about, you know, becoming a Christian and having faith in God is that it becomes less about me and my abilities to get through things and move through things, but actually trusting and relying on God. I'd love to hear kind of, were there any kind of notable changes in your life since that moment where it's just, you know what, God, you can have it. You can have all the, let's call it baggage, the hiker's backpack, you know, you can have that. Were there any kind of changes that maybe you can remember that you saw in your life, or as a mom or with family?
Definitely. I mean, for someone who was trying to control everything all the time, while I had now met Jesus and I knew that something had to change, it wasn't easy. It did not happen overnight. I didn't get up off the ground and I was instantly a new person. I knew that there was work. Sure. There was lots of work, internal work that I needed to do. And but I wanted to do that work. I didn't want to carry everything. I didn't want to have to be the person who had to be responsible and had to be the adult all the time. I wanted someone else to lean on, and someone that I could count on ultimately, because I haven't had that. So I just wanted someone that I could count on. And I realized that I could count on Jesus. I could rely on him. I just needed to be able to untrain all those bad parts of me to allow him to take over. So it was definitely a journey, and it still is a journey up until today. But my life did start in the church, and I met Evan, my incredible husband, 6 years ago, and convinced him to come to church with me. And I was still on my own journey, but he, from the moment he arrived, you know, he cried during worship, and he's like, this is his home. We hitched our wagon to the church. We've been on this incredible journey. He was like, right, one morning he woke up, he's like, okay, we're getting baptized today. I'm like, okay, we're getting baptized today. And we attended courses, and we've surfed together up until the point where now we lead a life group. But it's been definitely a journey. I've had to intentionally, and like I said, untrain those parts, intentionally say to God, this is yours, intentionally stop myself from trying to take control, because I've always been in the fight mode. I've always been in fight mode, kind of just pull myself back. But I knew that wasn't sustainable. And now that I had Jesus in my life, I had a hand over to him. So it's still a battle, but I'm definitely getting better at it. And so that's kind of been my journey with the church over the last 6 years.
I love that. And I think I resonate with that, fight mode. Like when you're by yourself, it is just, if I don't do it, who's gonna do it? Who's gonna look after my kids? Who's gonna get it done? And that's one of the beautiful things about faith and Jesus, because he just promises to do life with us, and to take the wheel when we're not strong enough to do it. Natasha, your story is incredible. Everybody's story is incredible, but yours is so unique. And I think even as we maybe wrap up with this question, if there were, let's be specific, maybe girls or women who've experienced something similar to maybe what you've had to navigate in your life, and are maybe grappling with faith, grappling with Christianity. I mean, you mentioned asking the question, why me? And I think that's so normal. Like, why would that have to happen? Would you have any advice or any bit of counsel you'd give to someone who's maybe watching this video and has gone through something similar?
I think something that I kept telling myself during my life is to hold on, hold on with both hands, with both feet, grab onto life and hold on. Even when it doesn't make sense, even when you're not really understanding, when things are in a really dark place. And the reason you should do that is because you never really know when the sun's about to rise. There's that saying, it's always the darkest before dawn, and you never know when breakthrough is coming. And it could just be right around the corner. If you give up before, you'll never know what's on the other side. And, going back to the why me, something that was very hard to come to terms with, but I realized that everything that I had been through, and I mean, we touched on some points, but we had 3 hours I could go through testimony upon testimony, is that your life isn't for you. My testimony isn't for me. The things that I went through isn't for me. And it's to share with someone else. It's to give someone else courage. And we're not meant to go through life alone. And if we don't share our stories, and if we don't share what we've been through, it's a very lonely place. So I went through what I went through so that I could tell someone who maybe isn't strong enough or won't be strong enough or doesn't feel strong enough, to tell them how God took me out of that situation. One of my favorite songs is, when God took me by the hand and led me out of Egypt. I mean, that's exactly it. He led me out of a very dark space. And you just need to allow him to do that. You need to ask for help. You need humans. You need community. It's why we do life group. And that there is help, just to hold on. That's my advice. It's not a miracle saying, but hold on. That's it.
No, I think that's brilliant, man. And this has been such an incredible conversation, Natasha. Thank you so much for vulnerability and opening up. And I can't even agree more with how our stories, God is doing something in our hearts and in our lives, but we almost lose a bit of the power if we don't share it, because there is so much potential for someone else to be encouraged and inspired by a story. So thank you. I'm sure this couldn't have been a very easy conversation, but thank you so much for opening yourself up and kind of letting us in and explaining how God is still moving and still working in your life. And for everybody that's kind of joined us today and watched the story, I don't believe it's a coincidence. I feel God is speaking to you. And if the story has been encouraging and inspiring for you, please, share it along with other people who might need to hear this message and be encouraged today. And also be reminded that your story can be an encouragement and an inspiration to people. We believe in the power of the testimony. When there is an opportunity or a moment to share what God is doing in your life, it's never about being the finished product. Neither Natasha or myself believe we're the finished product, not even close. But what God is doing in our lives and in your life is powerful. Let's take moments to share what God is doing, to share our story, our testimony, and I believe God will do a great work through that. But Natasha, thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Thanks for having me, Phil. It's been incredible to share. Thank you.
Amazing. God bless you guys. We'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.